Broadcasting from the commodity capital of the world, Zurich, Switzerland, this is Insider's Guide to Energy.
Insider's Guide to Energy, ETRM mini-series, brought to you by Stappers, where post-trading matters, and falls in independent management and consulting beauty, creating impacts for clients and markets.
Welcome to Insider's Guide to Energy, ETRM mini-series. Today we're here with Hitachi, and I have Hugo Stappers with us. Hugo, welcome to the program.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me. Good to be with you and Martin.
Well, it's fantastic to have you here. As we start this episode, it's probably good to start with a little background about who you are and what you do and what company you work for.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm with Hitachi Energy, and that has been a bit of a journey. Before we were Hitachi ABB Power Grids, and before it was ABB, and before that I actually worked for Pioneer Solutions. We were acquired back in November, about a year ago, by Hitachi, and are now integrated in the Energy Portfolio Management Group. I've been looking after sales and marketing for Europe, Middle East, Africa, but I've just assumed a new role as global sales leader for the Energy Portfolio Management Group. And so that is looking after all products from data to modeling to optimization to energy and trading.
That's exciting, and the rich history there will be helpful for this next question. So one of the things that we're covering, and the reason we have an ETRM mini-series, for those following it already have heard this question multiple times, but what we believe is the ETRM space has gotten very crowded. We see a lot of activity there, whether it's startups, whether it's legacy companies reinventing themselves, and it seems to be where there's smoke, there's fire. And so we decided to start this ETRM mini-series. What I'd like to know from your perspective and your experience, what trends do you see? Do you believe that it's become a crowded space? And are you seeing some trends that are taking place in ETRM these days?
It has been a crowded space for a long time, Chris. I've been in this business for 20 years. I've seen consolidation, way back when you remember, what is now SunGard, FIS, used to be Caminus, and it used to be a whole slew of companies. And we still see that most recently, of course, with, the Ion company. And then, Pioneer Solutions is part of some of that consolidation. I do see that there's probably a top 10 in that, group of about probably 100 ETRM vendors. Some are really more bespoke, out of consulting companies, and others are really, front to back software vendors, like that top 10, and they've been around, for a long time, and they are still there. So other trends that I see is that, with renewables, with the electrification, I think that the type of, ETRM system, CTRM system is changing, and so is requiring new, attributes and new characteristics that you see not happening in the legacy system. So that also is forcing that consolidation. That's also forcing, getting other products in there. And at Hitachi Energy, I think that recipe of not just being acquired to take competition out, or being acquired to get investors in to further grow. This is really, adding value to another portfolio that I think will be crucial in going out to market with maybe a new type of, ETRM offering, ETRM solution, not just, deal capture to creating an invoice, but, surrounded by some other elements and functionality that this new market, this renewable market, is going to require, where fossil fuels are going to disappear.
So, Hugo, I heard you saying that from your point of view, the consolidation is still ongoing, as it did for the last or past 20 years. And I think you also mentioned some reasons for that, like renewables is for sure one reason why systems must evolve, and also the electrification that comes with it. But after feeling, looking into the market and our project, that there might be also other reasons why there are startups popping into that field. So companies that really try to sort of reinvent the whole vision and strategy around ETM systems. So do you think that there is maybe more reasons behind than just renewables, maybe also from a technology point of view, why there is new startups popping in and why there is still consolidation ongoing?
Yeah, that will play a role as well. If you are trying to provide a point solution, doing one thing really well with the latest technology, that needs to then interface with other systems. Then if you get traction and can build it up, then you have a chance. And is that an ETRM system? Probably not. It might be more, what you see, for example, with algorithmic trading, the automated trading solutions. They are combinations of connecting with trading venues and scheduling nomination, right? And that's just a portion of front to back ETRM system, and often needs to integrate with an ETRM system. And then you also have this notion of trying to add other modules, but again, they're not ETRM systems front to back. Other people that are bringing ETRM to market say, hey, the legacy players didn't have a cloud-based solution. Here's a Sass solution, software as a service solution, and so that will be new and different. But then I say, that has been existing for a while, not by everyone, because a lot of these technologies were, legacy, were thick client architectures. And so, therefore people think they have a chance, right? The bigger guys have been slower to offer what the market demands. But that trend started, probably 4 or 5 years ago, where after the financial crisis, people felt like cost of trading is too high. This needs to come down. We want to get simpler systems. We want to get cheaper systems. We want to get systems without a lot of maintenance cost, right? Any custom system that you need to change, will take a lot of cost to update and refine to the new market demands. So that provided some of these new entrants a chance to offer, the best next thing, right? But are they, do they have enough scale? Do they have enough critical mass to really, take over the crown of, the next ETRM top vendor? I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, so if I understood correctly, from your point of view, the ETRM solutions move more into let's say, a modular way of providing functionality and services. So it sounds to me like a bit of moving towards microservices instead of having one monolithic system that can do everything. So the client can and pick also the modules and the services that she or he wants to have and needs in his architecture. So
yeah. I'm not sure if microservices is really, you hear a lot about it, but I think service-oriented architecture, thin client, with right integration automation, has that really been fully utilized? I don't think so. I think an ETRM system is a big system. I think SAP, ERP, and I don't need to tell you guys, but that requires stability, right? It's a transactional system. It's complex. It does a lot. It does critical items. And so if you moving to microservices, then it might not be that easy in these bigger systems, right? And I've I'm not a technologist, but I've also seen that the microservices apparently is taking much more work than people anticipated. Same thing with blockchain, all getting high in the hype curve, but then people realized it isn't performing at the pace and speed that we really need with a solution like that. And then if you go back to the modularity, I agree with you there, because like I said, to bring that cost down, initially best of breed, 4 or 5 years ago, best of breed was kind of out of fashion, because people believed that the bigger energy companies believed that integration was problematic, was not optimal, and was therefore a risk, and therefore best of breed was not good, and therefore they fell back to that monolith system that you just mentioned. And I think today that's no longer an argument. I think that integration is top notch, is there, and therefore we can interface with, you call it an ecosystem, but with partners, with other point solutions, and therefore best of breed, I think, is back on the table. And at Hitachi, we can provide a front to back system. I don't want to call it monolith, because there's a base system that has some logical components together, right? You can't capture trade without capture a counterparty, without capturing a price, for example. But we also provide specialized modules, right, for more complex settlement that would, that can again interface with new initiatives like electronic settlement that you see here in Europe, for example. But also for certificate management, also for carbon accounting, also for derivative hedge accounting, right? So those are all specialized modules, and in that sense, we were already doing a modular approach years ago before this whole conversation started. And then I think the notion of an app store type thing, we have read about it as well. Yeah, I wonder, right? Is that a working ecosystem that you have something, I have something? Can it be compatible? Will I buy that from you? Do I deal with two vendors now? Is it as seamless as it is? We haven't gotten into that yet. We have certainly gotten into integrating with systems, right? Whether algorithmic trading, or ERP systems, or accounting systems, or specialized risk systems, or what have you. But to embed a piece of someone else in our system, like an app, I haven't seen the viability there yet. At least not at the higher tier companies.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that you believe in modular architectures. You don't have religion as to if it's microservices or something else. That's really not the point. That it's the modularity is the value that I heard you say, and how you achieve it successfully is dependent on the implementation you need to do. But I guess what I'm also hearing you say is that although modular, and that you certainly have integration for parts of it, is you still see there's significant value of those modules coming from, let's say, Hitachi in this case, because you don't have to worry about maybe the workflow of another vendor or the quality control of having an app store or something like that. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that what you're trying to tell us?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable summary, right? I think that the modularity could be to keep costs down. You don't need to take out your ETRM system and augment a portion of functionality by a standalone module that you can add on. But I would call that a little, that's not an app store type thing, right? That's really, here it's not an app store thing. It's really, I have this solution, and you can acquire that, add it to your system landscape, integrate it, because integration will work, is modern, is seamless. And so in that way, I think, it would work better. So integration, yes. Add-on modules, yes. Modularity, yes. App Store approach, I don't know if that's marketing hype.
Sure. So where have your customers been asking you to integrate? So give us, I mean, you gave one earlier. So what kind of application do you think makes sense to integrate, and what kind makes more sense to develop from a Hitachi perspective?
I think ETRM is a particular area, although I see ETRM also somewhat evolving. But today there are certainly specialists, right? So integration with an accounting system, we are not building accounting systems. Can we do settlement at a very high level, producing invoice? Absolutely, but we're not a bookkeeping system. So that integration always stays. A system that is, for generation optimization, you integrate with. Hitachi can indeed provide that, but that would be an area where we would integrate with. An auto trader type specialist system, is something that will ETRM move there? Perhaps. Do some people do that? Yes, but still, those are specialized solutions. And so you would interface with that given the short-term market that we are in because of renewables. Integration, of course, with energy trading venues, EPEX, Spot, EEX, ICE, CME, NYMEX, that all is there. Integration with products that interface with regional organized markets like North America, PGM, New York ISO, California ISO, ERCOT, etc. In order to automate that participation in those markets, you need to have a module like that. Now, Hitachi Energy happens to have the dominant product for that as well, but otherwise, if you wouldn't, you would have to integrate with that as well. And then, of course, you have other integration like, electronic confirmation matching, electronic settlement, right? Those type of initiatives and solutions that are being brought to the market is not something that the ETRM vendor necessarily is developing. So they go out and work with a customer to interface with those kind of solutions as well. So that's basically landscape that ETRM lives in, right? It's surrounded by all kinds of systems, and the list could be longer, right? Nomination systems, forecasting systems, etc.
Okay, cool. So I guess I think it may make sense to maybe get a little bit into some of the other things you mentioned. A couple times in the conversation so far, I've heard you mention things about renewables and trends there. So maybe we should switch gears and talk about, what you're doing there and what your thoughts are specifically towards renewables.
Yeah, renewables is super big, Chris. What you see is, at Pioneer Solutions, so the company that Hitachi Energy now has acquired, they started with back office solutions, including certificate management, including emission allowances and some others. For a long time, that wasn't always of interest. In the North American market, you had the renewable, standard program, and so a lot was happening there with, renewable energy certificates because you had compliance reporting. You had some, you have a voluntary market here in Europe as well as a mandatory compulsory market in the UK. But because the guarantee of origin certificates or green certificates or some others, they were all low priced because the push to renewables was there, but not really at the level that we see it today. And I think after the European Union came out with a Fit for 55 program, after the IPCC came out with their report, you see more and more people participating in this market to get either a greener footprint, as a company. So I'm buying gray electricity, and I will buy a guarantee of origin to kind of offset that. But also on the emission side, where you see that EUAs and SAREs are financial instruments constantly being traded on the trading venues. On top of that, you see biogas playing a big role because we are all pursuing those activities. So carbon accounting, renewable certificate management are two big items that I'm spending a lot of time on. We are getting a lot of interest. We have the right type of tools. We happen to be uniquely positioned to have those tools. And so they are certainly driving that. And the interesting thing is, to kind of wrap up, is that Hitachi Energy is doing a lot, from the generator all the way to the market as a company, right? So we can really have engage in the conversation with our clients where we can cater to a lot more in what they are doing. Imagine a renewable asset owner needs to invest in his new projects. We can provide the reference cases and the data for them to get it going, but we can also take them on their journey until they need to sell their PPAs, until they need to participate in the wholesale electricity market and need trading and risk management solutions, right? So that's a very interesting value proposition that we can put forward, and we see that happening, right? We see that happening. You see a lot of renewable asset owners getting into the market. They need these kind of energy trading risk management systems. Off-takers do not want to take all the risk of the PPA, so you're forced into that market to really hedge your product. So we definitely see that. But on the emission side, the other thing is that corporates are getting into the market too, right? They need to find ways to do carbon accounting, right? Think about the large emitters could be big utilities, could be mining companies, could be big industrials, airlines, etc. There is so much pressure on these companies to show that they are participating, that they are getting a more environmentally friendly footprint. And that's outside of ETRM almost, right? You could call it an environmental ETRM, maybe, but that's what you see happening in the renewables world.
Yeah, very interesting. I think you covered a lot of topics that is driving the industry in terms of renewables. So I think the whole goal for most is to get green, and I think they even have to from a regulatory point of view. Otherwise, they have to potentially take some penalties if they don't meet the goals that at least are set here in Europe. And you mentioned a few vehicles how to get there. So emissions, certificates, also PPAs. I think that's something that is very, very much on the rise. And what I can see is, especially in terms of PPAs, that there are two phases. So the pre-trade phase and then the post-trade phase once there is an agreement on a PPA, which can be a lengthy negotiation phase. But once there is an agreement, of course, any company is interested to somehow capture the PPAs in their ideally ETM systems and also be able to manage the workflow that comes with a PPA. And PPAs, as we all know, they are quite or can be quite complex deal structures with complex payoff formulas, complex special agreements around it. So I can see some clients struggling that they get it into their ETM system and build up a proper workflow in terms of daily valuation and risk management. So I'm very interested in what Hitachi is doing in that context. So if you're developing your system further in order to provide a proper workflow, including risk management and valuation for clients.
Yeah, very interesting topic, Martin, and that goes back to what Chris said earlier in terms of modularity, but also the add-on modules that you integrate with. Because as I mentioned earlier, Pioneer Solutions, now Hitachi, started with back office solutions. We had this settlement product that was able to not just do a standard deal settlement, meaning volume times price equals, right? But could really do the more complex contract settlement as well. And remembering, ETRM systems, many actually of them couldn't even produce an invoice, right? So today you can't do without a very strong back office, exactly for the point, Martin, that you made, because of all these PPAs, and it is increasing substantially. So what we have been able to do with our settlement tracker product, that's an add-on module that we can add to our ETRM system, but that we can also sell to someone else that has another ETRM system. And that has the ability in what you just described as being able to capture and model these charge types and billing determinants that are coming out of the PPA contracts that are complex, that may have formulas behind them where you need to calculate them individually. And that has to do with either the complexity of the contract, may have to do with number of stakeholders in that PPA that each need to get their share or portion, right? So you need to calculate that. And what we have been able to do with Settlement Tracker is exactly that. And we can automate certainly the standard PPA contract settlement, to the level where robotic process automation could take over to even automate further, that you wouldn't have any human in there anymore. And I think today in this world where we see labor shortages, that would be a value add, right? To get a settlement analyst to do something more and not some routine piece of work. But then also you see that Settlement Tracker can play the role where you get the more complex PPAs. And I don't know what your view is. I think that a lot of the PPAs are still fairly standard, but that you see people getting more and more creative. And that's where we have a perfect solution there. And we do work with companies that are very active in the renewable space with wind parks, wind projects, solar parks, and projects where they need this kind of tool. And that is just because it is no longer volume times price equals. It's really calculating some formulas for inputs, then driving these charge types, and then really getting into the invoice, and that can really then be driven into either an invoice that you send out automatically to the counterparty, or could be driven into ESM type settlement solutions, because you do everything right and to its full extent in our solution, and then you can really automate that last mile with your counterparty through a solution like ESM, right? So that really fits in very nicely in this trend of more and more PPAs.
Okay. I have to say I totally agree with you that a big part of the PPAs is still standard. I think you mentioned that, but I do also see, as you mentioned, that people get more and more creative and adding some special fee types in their PPA contracts, sometimes linked to optionality, and then it gets tricky in terms of pricing, of course, when we are in a pre-trade phase, but especially also during the daily valuation after the transaction has been agreed. And so performance measurement and risk management is, from my point of view, something that clients struggle when structures get more complex. So in that context, is Hitachi providing then out of the box valuation models and risk management models for more the standard PPAs, but maybe also for already more complex PPAs? And what does Hitachi do if a client has PPAs that are more complex and that need more comprehensive valuation engine and risk management model? Do you then implement something for them upon request, or do they also have the possibility to build their own pricing and risk management model and integrate it into your solution?
Yeah, both. So to come back on your first comment, Martin, that's actually interesting because that's something else that I believe in. Because of the market, where the market is, and Chris was asking about what do you see in the market. I think there's so much competition and so much change and so much transformation happening that also the front office, the traders, need to come up with something clever, something creative. But if your back office cannot settle that, then you have a problem. You cannot be as creative as you would like to be or could be if you had a very sophisticated back office. So that certainly is something that we at Hitachi see and can support. Our ETRM system, has a strong, robust mid-office functionality. being able to provide mark-to-market, value at risk, Monte Carlo engines, earnings at risk, cash flow at risk, all those risk analytics we can support. And so, you do see these questions. Is it directly tied to PPAs? Well, we can do a lot of, formula-based calculations in the system. But you might also have, asset owners, renewable asset owners looking at their portfolio and see, okay, I'm doing really well in this geography here, but I'm not doing really well in this geography there. How's my portfolio really, performing? And most of those, typically IPPs, are all based on PPA sales, right? So, and a large portion of the PPA is covered, or a large portion of the risk, I should say, is covered by the PPA contract. But there's, of course, a portion of that PPA that the off-taker is not willing to cover, right? And for that reason, the asset owner, the IPP, the generator needs to go into the wholesale market and then do its hedging, right? They need to now start buying financial instruments, options, future contracts, and so on, to hedge their position, to be able to be competitive with their pricing in the PPA. So that's kind of the thing that we see. So that portion for them to go into the market is where ETRM comes in. That's where the front office can really capture, what they're doing. The mid office really helps them with, the whole hedging, practice and policies, and then the back office really, is able to support, the complexity of the PPA contract itself. Is that answering your question?
Yes, the biggest part, yes. That was really enlightening from Hitachi's perspective and how you can support clients there, especially when it comes to more complex structures. But what I'm still wondering a bit is if your clients do then also have the possibility to build and also integrate their own valuation and risk management models, at least maybe via API, or maybe directly integrating it as a functionality in the system. So how does that work? Do you provide something particular?
It is actually an interesting question, because again, Chris, talking about trends, that is certainly something that you see sometimes, right? So sometimes valuation, or let's call it valuation, is the secret sauce, right? And some companies don't want that secret sauce to be modeled into the ETRM system. So they want that to be somewhere out, right? So that could be that either they calculate that, outside of the system and drive results into our ETRM system through integration, so that we can easily support that, and then run the reports based on those results. So that is one way. Another way could be that we have what we call an integration with Excel, and you can easily connect our system with an Excel spreadsheet through that add-on module that we have. So you could also run data out of ETRM into the Excel, and then directly calculate against your own formulas that you don't need to model into our system. Can you, in our ETRM system, change some of the valuation logic? You can set parameters, but can you take pieces, whether MATLAB or Python or other pieces into our system? No, we don't do that. So you can't build your own thing in our system. We have our own logic and formulas and calculations in the system, and you can configure that based on parameters. You can feed the beast with your own data results, but you can't create your own proprietary logic, if you will, within the ETRM system.
Right. So I hear you're basically saying that you most of your customers would probably leverage Excel to do kind of their own formulas, or do it outside the system and give you the results back, but not make it part of the system, is what I just heard.
Yeah, either they rely on our capabilities that we have, and that's sufficient, or they drive data into our system from their own system, because they don't want to model into our ETRM system, or we will drive data out through our tool, and we enable them to do that, and they can connect that spreadsheet directly, connect it to our database, and do their thing there. But Chris, speaking of trends, you also see, not because we don't have it, but again, because certain customers think that they just have a more sophisticated risk management engine, that they say, I don't want to buy ETRM, I want to buy ETM, right? And so they do the risk themselves. And, that goes back to Martin's earlier comments, modularity, ecosystem. I mean, whatever the marketing word is here, at some point I can deliver, a minimal set of logically connected functionality, from trade capture to, capturing prices and counterparty data, because, hey, that is just a logical component. And then the client may choose to do things themselves with their own solutions, right? And some of that you see happening as well.
So I hear that, right? So I think we've kind of beat to death the modularity, and that what I hear you say is you deliver what the customer needs, is I think what you're telling me. So if the customer doesn't need all the components, they take the components they need, and they do what they need themselves. So I think what I just heard you say. One of the things that I've seen from my perspective is, especially with ETRM systems that have been around for some period of time. So what I heard you say is, hey, look, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but cloud isn't new to us. We've got that. We believe in modularity. What about the UX? What's happening with the UX? Because if I look at some of the ETRM systems that have been around for some period of time compared to some of the upstarts, there's considerable difference in usability and look and feel. So what's Hitachi doing there?
Yeah, I think that we right there. I think we have a modern looking thin client based architecture. You need to, and we have had that, for many years. So you need a internet browser to access our system, whether that's installed on premise or whether we remotely host that, or whether you're using our software as a service solution. For that reason, when cloud, or let me rephrase, when software as a service became more prominent, it was for us very easy, engineering wise, to make our system available through such an offering. And so, yeah, we have, a modern looking system with a lot of usability in there, intuitive, as I said, thin client. So, it can be easily accessed. And that goes back to, cloud as well. I mean, cloud for some people may mean that, I want you to remotely host in a data center that is mine, or I want you to remotely host in a data center of yours, or it could be that it is software as a service in a single tenant environment, or it is software as a service in, a multi-tenant environment, right? So clients have all kinds of definitions. For me, software as a service is cloud-based, multi-tenant, single contract, easy to go, everyone on the same code, no customization, maybe except for interfaces. Tailoring, configuring, absolutely, but not software coding, right? And so we have been doing that, all the deployments, on site, in data centers, and Sass, for a long time. Yeah, and I think, from a security perspective, from a cost perspective, etc., there have been a lot of arguments that, can it scale? Is it secure, etc.? Well, I mean, Salesforce.com, the CRM system that we all know, has been around since 1999, right? All these systems have evolved into the same kind of security as the banks are using, where you are making your online payments, right? So these arguments have been become weaker and weaker, and today, certainly with COVID-19, suddenly everyone needed a SaaS system. Everyone wanted to access remotely, and a lot of ETRM vendors couldn't do that. They had to scratch their head, had to emulate, put VPN stuff in there to try to make that possible, because people had to work at home, and we really didn't have that problem.
So how many of your clients are then fully into the cloud with your ETM solution, like maybe proportionally share-wise?
Yeah, so I would say almost half. I think that half is on-premise.
Hmm.
The other half is where we either remotely host for them or where they use our SaaS system.
Okay. And how does your support and also maintenance model look like, especially for the cloud option? Then, do you provide a fully hosted and supported model in that
Yeah,
sense?
so our SaaS system, again, my definition of SaaS is multi-tenant. You put a coin in the
Yeah.
jukebox and the music plays, right? I mean, that's the ID kind of. We envisioned initially, Martin, that the subscribers to that, it's renting software, as we all understand, would be able to configure this themselves. And that is why we didn't do customization to it. You get standard configurable tools, like your Windows system that you have on your laptop. You can personalize that, right? But you cannot change the code. You can personalize that. So that's what we did as well. So we made available a lot of online training tutorials, from videos, how-tos, presentations, process flows in your step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, to work you through setting this up. And so that the idea was that I give you an orientation. By week 2, you do some self-study. By week 3, you have entered a trade and set up a mark-to-market report and created an invoice. And so by week 4, you could be live. Now, that was our plan, but we know that clients not always have that discipline. They don't always have the bandwidth. They often, get distracted. So we kind of, backtracked, but we kind of said, listen, we need to be there with you for customer success, your own protection, and help you with that. But it still helps a lot. So some of that meant that I was still going to work with the client to work through the scope phase with requirements, to do the training, to do the configuration, the typical things you would do in a traditional ETRM implementation, right? Could that go quicker? Yes. Is a system like that more available to smaller, startup type companies? Absolutely. Was the online tutorial material still very useful? Absolutely, because it helped with onboarding, it helped with refreshing, it helped with not having to rely on us as a vendor. So that all worked. And then from a support perspective, we use a distributed network of support, and I'm a big proponent of people needing to think about the problem they have, right? And we can all imagine that in our own world. I have pain, I have pain, right? And then your doctor will say, where do you have pain? Well, I have pain in my ear. Which ear? My left ear. Okay, right? So now he knows something. So people calling, the phone support thing, we do a lot, and most of it, I would say, through our help desk ticket system, so that people really, are writing up, what their problem is, and then, we can respond to that, basically around the clock from, our locations that we have. Was that answering your question, Martin?
Yes, definitely. I'm just wondering a bit because I would like to dive into more, but I think we don't have the time to go deep into that. But I think before we enter into the speed round session or the 10 questions that we have prepared, I would just like to have one assessment from your side on the whole topic of automation. So maybe to give it a bit of a direction. So what I can see is that, of course, and you mentioned it already, automation is getting more and more important for clients, especially the topic automated trading or algo trading. Traders want to not just have strategies in mind that they execute maybe semi-manually, but they want to also code potentially their own strategies and have them a robust execution against the market. Maybe also a backtesting framework where they can test their strategy. So all this setup, so building strategies requires quite some investment from my point of view, also in the infrastructure and also in the architectural design that must happen as a first step. So I'm wondering, and that's my question to you, do you share this development or this view on the development that algo trading is on the rise? I heard yes. And if so, is Hitachi planning to build some functionality for developing specific, custom specific strategies, not through Hitachi, because that's something that traders want to keep themselves, the IP, but that traders maybe have the possibility on the Hitachi solution or platform to develop strategies and let it run against the market?
Yeah, interesting. So first thing, as we started this conversation, we living in this renewable world, sustainability, electrification, and that brings me to the whole, what is it, decarbonation and decentralization and to digitalization, right? So these first two, we can just not reach that without digitalization. And so a lot of that automation that you're mentioning, Martin, may not even happen, right? If we talk about ETRM today, some of these ETRM systems may not have really delivered yet, what eventually the goal was, right? Automation front to back. And so now that needs to happen much more. And today, with renewables in the mix, like you said, it's all going to short-term markets. It is all going to response. And so your ETRM system already needs to be supporting near real-time processing, right? So it needs to be a live system. Our system, the Hitachi system, has always been a live system, right? So trades coming in, you can see your position being updated. If you don't have that, then you have a problem. Driving trades in is not a problem that needs to be automated as well. And I can have that conversation all the way to the back again, and then we get back to your PPAs and automating that, because otherwise, you can't really operate in this market. Do I see ourselves getting into, algo trading? Before I get to that, I think you're right that the bid preparation is something that is secret sauce. That's something that the market participant will figure out himself, and we have been in that. Hitachi has been in that space years ago, but that was a struggle, right? Because how much could you really do? How much could you do with a single tool that would work for everyone, right? Where everyone would have their own little thingy. If you do that individually, you can do that. So what we do support in our system is that you can cook your little meal and then upload that into the ETRM system. We can see an overview of all your bits and then submit those bits to the trading venue. Are we getting there yet to do, auto trading and algo trading? We don't do that yet. Are we going to go in there? I don't know. I think there are a lot of specialist vendors out there. And so, if the market is further developing, we may have no choice where ETRM needs to evolve into doing this kind of thing as well. And so a big portion, of course, we do already, right? Can we receive awards and trades from the market automatically, like from an EPEC spot or from another direct intraday market? Yes. Can we submit to these markets? Yes, we can do that too. Can we already do that based on rule-based logic? No, we don't do that yet. Not by firing 3,000 bids and offers to that market. We are not there yet. And I can't confirm whether we will go there, depending on where the market is.
Well,
Thank you, Hugo. That was, I think, a very good overview where you stand there and how you see the trend and development. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that we've covered is a pretty good swath of what you bring to the market. I'd like to switch gears now and move to what Martin already told you is the speed round. We have 10 questions that we've asked every vendor participating in the ETRM educational mini series, and we're just going to round robin the questions. So I'll go ahead and start, and these are just short answers. So just whatever short answer comes to mind. So the first question is, will the number of vendors for ETRM solutions shrink or expand in the future?
Stay the same. People come in, people go. People come in, people go. It's just been happening over the past 20 years and longer.
Okay. Second question, how many deals per minute must a modern ETRM system today be capable to import?
How many deals per minute? I don't know. Probably hundreds.
Hundreds. Okay. Yeah.
All right. What commodity types and energy types are you offering, and which ones would you consider your strengths?
Power, gas are certainly the top ones, and we see that as future because of electrification. We also support hydrocarbons, ags, and then, of course, certificates and emissions.
Thank you.
Okay. Then, do you offer a real-time position management module? And if yes, does it incorporate new trades real-time or near real-time at least?
Yes, we do. Our ETRM system is a live system, so it supports near real-time position updating and management.
Okay.
So do you have automated workflows for straight-through processing?
Yes, we do.
Okay, then can your ETRM system price Asian options today?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Are you offering a full integration and implementation service with your ETRM solution?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so what is, from your point of view, the biggest threat or the biggest challenge for third-party ETRM vendors?
The biggest threat, if you do not keep up your technology to enable the automation integration that the new market is requiring, if you do not support these new renewables and the associated processes that come with it because of renewables, then you will be, you will be on the losing end.
Yeah, so keep up with the business and the technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is your licensing model like today, and you anticipate it's going to change in the future?
We support at high level 3 models. Just the traditional one, perpetual license with yearly maintenance. We can do so that's a CAPEX model, OPEX model, an annual fee based on a contract term, and that would include support and the license. And then we do Sass, so subscription based, including your access to the software, support, the hosting, and upgrades.
Okay, then last question. Are you offering an API or APIs, and what is the technology behind it?
Yes, we do. We have a lot of import out and export support in the system. Not everything needs to be API, but we also provide REST API web services, inbound, outbound, as well as some other web services, but also formats like Fix and and any other items that clients need.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for answering our questions. So just to give you a chance to wrap up, maybe if you want to take a minute or two just to bring it all together for our audience of why they should be reaching out to you and talking to Hitachi.
Well, it was a pleasure, certainly. Again, Hitachi Energy is providing quite a comprehensive portfolio, from your market data to your modeling to your optimization, all the way the journey to the market. Extensive capabilities technically, being able to automate everything. And then, in this world where we talk about PPAs, renewables, emissions, we all support that as well. So do talk to us. We are happy to provide you a demo.
Well, thank you so much for joining. For our audience, this concludes this episode of the ETRM mini-series. We hope you're enjoying the series as much as Martin and I are producing it. I think it's been a fantastic journey so far. There's 13 vendors to listen to. So if you haven't heard any other episodes, please go back to insidersguidetoenergy.com, look for the other episodes, subscribe so you catch them when they come out. And we look forward to seeing you again on another instance of ETRM mini-series. Thank you.